Jews, but God didn't tell us where to cut. Is it possible? I'm losing my eternity if I'm not circumcise my children, and God will not tell me even Aleph Bet how to do it, how to cut, what happened when the baby is sick. One question. Second, the Sabbath. The Sabbath. I gotta keep the laws of the Sabbath. I don't know if you know, but there are
May I interject?
There are thousands of laws.
They hear you every week. Maybe I can say something.
No, I'm answering what you ask about the oral laws. You ask me a question, I'm answering.
We need new rules. That's what we need.
Okay, so you say it like this. You say the oral
We
laws.
need an oral law for our discussion here.
I'm asking, you ask me a question, I'm answering you. And the point is like this. God say you have to observe the Sabbath, and a person that does not observe the Sabbath, exclude himself from Judaism. Why? It's the covenant that we made with God. It's applied to Jews, by the way, also. Not only to non-Jews. But a Jew that refuses to keep the law of the Sabbath, he puts himself in violation. And he is not able to do certain Jewish holy ceremony. Why? Because it's the covenant that God made with the Jewish nation for eternity. That's the word of the Torah. Now, where does it say in the written Torah, from the thousands of laws that we keep, most of us here, where does it say it? Comes the Torah in 12 different places and say that a Jew does not keep the law of the Sabbath, he will be stoned to death, and his soul will cut for eternity. Tell me please, in the entire written Torah, God comes and gives me an order. You should keep the Sabbath. You should not do any work in Sabbath. Comes a Jew that just accepted the book and said, okay, God, I'm willing to listen to you. Where are the instructions? There's nowhere in the world where it's a one detail about the Sabbath. The same thing to Tefillin, the same thing, each one of the laws. Comes the Torah and separate between the written laws and the oral laws. And you know why? The non-Jews will not have it.
Okay.
Because if the non-Jews will have it in their hand today, nobody in the world will know if he is an original descendant of the Jewish nation. Why? Everybody wanted to be a son of God in that generation, because the Goyim, the non-Jews, they wanted to be religious as they are today. They want to join the nation of God, who everybody admit that got the Torah from Mount Sinai. Everybody, the Goyim, admit it. And they translated it to 70 languages, which show interest. So what do we have to do?
Yosef,
if
wait a second.
everything will be in the book,
Wait a
we
second.
will become Jews in 2
You're
minutes.
somebody who cares a lot about evidence, and I respect that. And you say that there must be an oral law, because if there was no oral law, we wouldn't know how to circumcise.
Not even a simple law.
Okay,
We would not
but
know.
Abraham was somehow able to circumcise, and he didn't have any oral law. The oral law, according to you, didn't come until Moses. How was it that Abraham was able to be a Jew and live before God and not have the oral law? Maybe there are other ways that they were able to follow the law without some mythical oral law for which you have no evidence.
I have news for you. There is a sentence in the Torah that says that I loved Abraham because he kept my Torahs, again, plural, written and the oral, and the laws and everything. Ekev asher shamar Avraham et torotai, mitzvotai vechukotai. Avraham kept all my laws. Comes the oral Torah and ask your question. The oral Torah say how... No, the opposite.
I'll tell you how you prove my point. When you said that Abraham kept my Torahs, that proved the point that Torahs are instructions or laws and not two separate bodies, because according to Jewish tradition, there was no oral law until Moses.
Who gave Abraham all the instructions, what to do and how to do, before the Torah was published? And I want to get your attention to one thing that the Torah says, that before the world was created, 974 generations before the Torah was ready, before the physical world was created. And before everything here started, the divine Torah was already existed. Now, if you know about Noah after the flood...
I need some evidence on that.
Okay, no problem. If Noah, after the flood, when he came out of the ark, how did he know how to tell the difference between pure animals and not pure animals? The oral Torah answer, because God gave the main people from the time of Adam, every person that the Torah highlight had all the laws of the Torah for him and all his followers until it was published in front of millions of people. And by the way, you should know that even the Sabbath was given a little bit before Mount Sinai. And now, you have to also remember one thing. If a person wanted to keep the laws of the written Torah, every Jew will do it completely different than the other. Now, you know that the Jews were living in exile for more than 2,000 years until about 60 years ago they started to gather in Israel. You also know there were no internet, no telephones, no communication, and the Jews were spread all over the world with no communication. Now, you also know that when the Yemenites, for instance, way before the destruction of the temple, they went to Yemen. And the Jews were spread all over the world, and they gathered to Israel, as I said, just before Israel became a state. Each one of them brought with him, with his family, thousands of oral laws that did not change a bit. Circumcision in Yemen was the same one in Poland. And the same thing, the Torah. The Jewish Torah have 304,805 letters, much longer than the New Testament, much longer than the Quran. If you go to every synagogue in the world, you tell the rabbi to open the Torah. The Torah is the same Torah. Everywhere you go, you see the same Torah. However, when you want to open up Quran in Kuwait and Quran in Saudi Arabia, and Quran in Israel, it's not the same Quran. There are many differences. Same thing, the New Testament, as I mentioned to you before. 150,000 differences on the text. Very simple.
I'm confused about that. What are you referring to when you say 150,000 different...
I'll explain. If I brought the original book now, and there we have, Baruch Hashem, a lot of people here, and each one of them had to take a feather and copy even only 100,000 letters. That's all. Each one has to copy. Now remember, there's no printing machine. So I have to see it from morning to night and write a page, 2 pages. It takes between 1 to 2 years to write a Sefer Torah. So now, if a person does it, what are the chances that a person will write manually 100,000 letters? Remember, the Torah is triple than that, 300,405 letters. But I want to just ask you as an intelligent question. A person write 100,000 letters. Is it possible that he will make 100, 300, 500 mistakes, 0.1%? You know what? Let's go to the minimum. 1 letter out of 100,000, it's very normal that a person made a mistake, especially in the Hebrew letters. Why? The Hebrew letters are very similar. The Yud and the Vav, it's exactly the same. The difference is 1 little dot. If the ink spread by a bit, the letter changed. So now, when the people copy it manually, and time when there is no electric, and they did everything manually, the battery died. Okay, so that gives me more permission to talk now. See?
I don't want to give you any more permission. You do very well without extra permission.
Thank you very much for the compliment. but Reuven, you did it. You were doing it too fast. I'll take care of you later. But the point was that a person make at least 1 mistake. He make 1 mistake in the letter Dalet. He made 1 mistake in the letter Resh. He made 1 mistake in the letter Lamed. He make 1 mistake in the letter He. He made it Chet. It's very similar letters. Now, between him and him, there's already 4 differences. And now, when everybody copied from the original text with only 1 letter mistake, now we have, I don't know, 100, 200 people. There's already 200 different texts. Multiply by 2,000 years, what do you get? Okay.
Now, finally, when you were talking about 150,000 versions, I couldn't figure out what you were talking about. Okay, what Yosef is talking about is that there are 150,000 variants. When you look at textual variants, you see, there are over 5,500 ancient Greek manuscripts. And what textual critics have done is to record every variation among these 5,500 texts. And so if you add up all those variations from all those different texts, you come up with something like 150,000. Yosef is correct. But let me just point out, if you divide it by 5,500 to get an idea of the average number of variants per text, you're not talking about that many. And when you recognize you're just talking about a letter, one letter out of a word, what you come down with, even though you might have those variants, is you come down with a text where there's really no question about the text, because we're just talking about little spelling mistakes for the most part.
Spelling that change the meaning of the words in many places.
But you see, if we have 5,500,
But it's
if we have 5,500,
the book is not
but you
divine
see,
anymore.
even if, well, we don't claim that the copies that were made of the originals are divine, but we do claim that originally, the same way with Tanakh, that originally it was all inspired by God. It was all without error. That's the same thing that we claim. And I would agree with you about those number of errors. But if you're talking about the many different words, and I can't tell you how many different words there are in the New Testament, and you're looking at all those different letters, you're really not talking about a whole lot at all when you're talking about 5,500 texts. In fact, the vast majority of textual critics acknowledge that even with these variations, it doesn't change the meaning of the text in any palpable way.
Not according to my sources.
Ah.
According to my sources, and I check the sources in Christian sources. Christians wrote, criticals of the New Testament, not Jews. Because if I will bring you from the rabbis, you say, oh, the rabbis wrote what's good for them. And if you want